Welcome to this presentation of the new Fotoweb 8 clients. The Fotoweb 8 clients have been completely rewritten from scratch to be more intuitive, more simple, as well as more powerful. They come in 4 flavors: anonymous users, which use the standard interface; registered users, which use also the standard interface; plus users, which use the standard interface with additional functions; and Pro clients, which use both the standard interface or the Pro interface, which is aimed at being a photo station replacement. This is a table of the 3 licenses that exist in the new Fotoweb clients: the standard, the plus, and the Pro. As you can see, the 3 interfaces support the main web interface, but only the Pro supports the Pro interface. Basic functionalities such as search, browse, zoom, download is supported by all 3 types of clients, as well as sharing and social features regarding creation and sharing of albums, Facebook comments and Fotoweb comments, but the share of individual folders and files, which will come later this year, is only supported by the Plus and new Pro client. In terms of workflow feature, upload and batch upload and batch metadata on upload is supported by all 3 types of clients. Metadata editing of 1 file at a time is also supported by every single client, but batch metadata in the web interface on a selection of items, for instance, is supported only by the Pro interface. Quick renditions and markers, which are visual indicators conditional to some metadata or condition, are supported by all 3 types of clients, but interactive markers and annotations are only supported by the Plus and Pro clients. Standard workflow actions, like they used to exist in Fotoweb 7, are supported by all clients, but the new extended actions are only supported in the Plus and Pro clients. Alerts are supported by all clients, as well as all the Fotoweb desktop features and the CMS export. The new selection widget for direct integration with CMS systems is only supported by the Plus and Pro clients. And directory services are supported by all 3 types of clients. Let's have a look at the Fotoweb 8 standard interface. So the standard interface is used by the anonymous users, by the standard users, by the Plus users, and the Pro users. Here we are logged on, we are not logged on, so we are a guest anonymous user, and we have access to the archives that unauthenticated users have access to. So clicking on an archive thumbnail gives you the thumbnail grid, and you can scroll through the files using the continuous scroll, so it's very easy to scroll. You can also do searches without being authenticated. And you can navigate using either the folder navigation, if it's enabled, or you can use, as an alternate way, the taxonomies. Taxonomies are predefined lists of metadata values that you build to direct your users using a particular search type. So you want to help your users to search for certain things, some events, some specific photographers, pictures, some special events, some special promotions, whatever you decide. And it uses metadata values that are stored in metadata sets. These metadata subsets are called metadata sets, precisely, and they can be attached to each archive independently. So using the metadata model, you build a metadata set in Fotoweb, attach it to an archive, and then for this archive, you go into the taxonomies and define which of the metadata fields you want to be listed here. So for instance, we can try get the pictures for one photographer, and then we can add another photographer.
And let's add another one because this one had no pictures. So now we get 2 pictures extra. And I can cross-reference this with another criteria, and an AND will be applied so that we get only the pictures that correspond to this multiple criteria selection. When I hover on the thumbnail, I will see additional metadata information, and if notes exist, you can see them by just hovering on the indicator, the yellow indicator here. If you click on a thumbnail, you get to the preview page, and the preview page will show you information, descriptive information for the asset, as well as additional information as defined and configured in your metadata sets. In this particular archive, we've chosen to build a region called rights management and another region called asset management. And each of these regions, we have added different metadata fields to manage the rights and to manage the status of our assets. So this is something we have defined ourselves, and it's completely without any programming, just using the backend operation center interface of Fotoweb 8. So it's a big improvement over previous version because no customization and no programming is required to be able to display the fields you want. There's a permalink, so using that permalink, you can actually share the asset on Facebook or Twitter if it's a publicly accessible archive, of course. And different types of documents give you different options. So if I go on a PDF or a PowerPoint file, you will also see the pages, and you can have preview of the pages for the file. In some instances, you'll be able to download even though you are not logged on. So as a guest user, I can also download if I've been granted the authority to. As you can see in the other archive here, the botanical one, because these are actually images that are courtesy of one of our customers, you can't download these images. If I log on now as a standard user, let's use this customer ID, which is a standard user. So what will standard users have that guest users do not have? Well, for one thing, we get here markers. Visual markers are an indication of a particular asset status. This one here indicates that this image has been approved for public use. If I go now and look for registered, I will get some images for which only registered users have been granted access. So that's why we have a different marker. So the marker indicates a valuable information to us. It can be linked to the rights, it can be linked to the status, to any management item or state of things that you want to define within your own workflow. So it's very powerful, and it gives users a very good indication of what they can do. Now I can create an alert for this registered query, and if I just click alerts, I get a confirmation message that this query has been created. And then I can modify the frequency at which this alert will be analyzed, either immediately or every hour, or if it's not too urgent, every 6 hours, or just every day I want to check if there are new registered images. And in which case I will receive an email on my account so that I can go and check. Also, I can do selections as a registered standard user, and then I get access to download. And download supports the delivery module of Fotoweb, which allows to predefine authorized formats for download. And in this particular case, if I do a multiple selection, I can select the type of download for each individual file. And I can add this file to an album. So if I decide to add these files to an existing album, for instance, I can go then inside this album. I can also create new albums or filter on these albums. And inside the album,
I will actually see a description and some tags. So I can do a search also on album tags. And then I can put comments. So I have actually put before these comments. Feel free to comment on my pre-selection of items for the November issue. And I can decide to share these. Actually, I already shared this with a photographer, and I can add more people. I can decide to share it with another customer, for instance, which is my first test customer, for instance. And I can update, and then these people will actually see this album in their own collection of albums, and they'll be able to comment on it. I can also send this album to an external person which has no account on Fotoweb by just clicking the get link, doing a copy, and pasting this link into an email that I will send to an external person. Now, if this address is publicly accessible and not behind a firewall or protected or whatever, then the public or the people I send it to, this link, like journalists or partners, will be able to get to this album page even though they don't have an account on Fotoweb. And if I click the Allow Downloads, they will be allowed to download from this album. So very easy to share with different people, even externally. Alerts, we've seen that before, so this is the list of the alerts that we have configured. And a new feature in the Fotoweb 8 is the upload. And this upload has been completely rewritten. We've got some sound files here, so we can select this sound file and send these to the upload area, for instance. And then we can caption all the files that we have selected in one operation. So let's say this is a video. No, it's not. So the type of resource, we don't have the type of resource that we need for that. This will be actually not production, this will be to verify in the CADAM service. And this is regarding the MediaTek. And we can put here test files for November. I can decide to put a license, I can decide to put access rights. So I can say that this is only accessible to the registered users or even to restricted to a particular group. So this restricted C indicates that only the CADAM staff will be able to use these files. And I'm the cataloger, and I won't put the verified by because this information hasn't been verified yet. So we can put a lot more information if it's available. And if there is a list of values, then I'm presented with the list of values. Clicking upload will actually proceed with the upload. And once the upload is done, I get a confirmation message. If it had failed or partially failed, I would get a retry option that allows me to retry for the files which have not been transferred. Pins. Pins are a very useful feature in Fotoweb 8. If I decide that I'm working on these files, but I'm not ready to do an album selection yet, I just want to pin them. And so that next time when I log in, maybe tomorrow, I can just click the pins icon here and get back to all the files that I've previously pinned. If I click that pin again, it will be unpinned. And then clicking on pins again will update the list of pinned files. So these are the files that I've been selecting as a work in process feature to work on them. And when I log out and I log in the next day, clicking the pins tab again, the pins button again, will give me that same list of files that I was working with. So if you're doing work in process and you don't need to create an album for that because it's not a particular project, it's just a regular work in process, just use the pins. It's a very useful feature for that. And you get some options for configuration, managing the exports to the CMS, and logout. Okay, so let's now log on as a Plus user. So let's say we have a photographer who actually has a Plus license. So nothing really differs from the standard interface. We're still using the standard interface. We just have a couple of new functions in. And right away you can see that we have a couple of more markers here. First, we see the same markers we saw as a standard users that indicate the status. This item has been approved for public use, and it's also a production item. But then we see a different type of markers, which I have conveniently placed on the right to differentiate them. And these markers are linked to new type of actions, extended actions, where we can modify actually right away the metadata, a little bit like photo station actions. So using these interactive markers and extended actions, I can now change the status of this item to say that it's available only to registered users. Or I can go back and change it to say it's restricted material. And then this restricted material will be accessible to only a particular group of users that I define in my workflow. So this will allow you to organize very complex workflows. All the more that you have also other type of indicators that you can use. For instance, I can say that client approval is required, and then I will have the corresponding action available to say that I can approve this job. And if I click on this action, then I've got a list of metadata fields. And I will have, in this case, to say that it's approved. And also, I can put a comment, and this comment will be available to the next people in line after this is approved to see what they will have to do with this image. I will say, please do a cutout of the rabbit. I believe it's a rabbit. Yeah, so we'll do a cutout of the rabbit before we use it. So I approve it, and I put a comment to do a cutout. So the next person in line, which will see this item, and maybe my action also, my approval action might also include another action to send it to a particular folder so that it's going to be monitored in a particular archive by some people responsible for the next steps in my workflow. So as you can see, this is very powerful in terms of the kind of workflow that you can achieve. A third type of interactive marker that I used here is to directly set this item as archived, which will probably make it disappear from the production. And I can do that with just one click. I can also do this for several items. So if I select several items here, I have now 3 files selected. I can of course download them, add them to albums. These are all the blue buttons here are the standard buttons from Fotoweb. And these are buttons that I have added that are linked to some specific actions. So these are what we call rapid action buttons. So if I decide that these 3 files are to be archived, then I need to confirm this, and because I had a confirmation text on my action, and then these items will be actually archived. So I need to refresh the page here because the refresh is not automatic in this case. But now my items have been archived. So basically, this is the big difference of the Plus client. Of course, there is also the ability to add annotations to an image or to an album. Just like you add comments you will be able very soon to add annotations on an image, which will be another layer on top of this image. Zoom functions, also available, doesn't require flash anymore. So another improvement also on the previous version. Edit text, you can edit text one at a time. If you have compulsory fields, then they appear as yellow. And in this case, I will just cancel it. And other actions available may include adding to albums and custom actions, which are the rapid actions that for which we can also define rapid action buttons like we saw previously. So that's basically it for the plus interface. Let's log out now, and let's log in with a Pro interface, which is the last and probably the most powerful interface. So right away you can see a big difference in terms of presentation. You can see here that I have already an archive and a selection that appears for two photographers and also for a folder. So this particular selection has been pinned into my list of tabs here. This means that every time I'm going to click on this pinned selection, I'm going to retrieve all the work that I had done, all the selections that I had configured, because I pinned it. So it's more like a bookmark, in fact, and it resists the logout and login session. So if I have work in process on these images, and I have very specific conditions and selections that I have used, I can all come back the next day and take these files. Folder navigation is a little bit different. It looks more like Photostation as well, so very familiar to the Photostation users. And finally, the taxonomies can also be accessed using this particular thing. So now if I want to add the restricted ones, I just need to hold the Control key and click again, and the other files will show up as well. So going back to this, big difference also for the Photostation. I say Photostation, this is not quite untrue because it's very much like a Photostation. And we're going to see that it's even more powerful than Photostation for some of the features. I have a zoom tool that I can use if I use the mouse wheel as well. And let's assume I want to change the text for all these images. So I have a bunch of selected files. I could have 200, 300, doesn't matter. I can download them. I can do a couple of operations like rotate, edit, etc. or delete them if I have authority to. But I can also change the text. And you see that it's yellow here, so this is required. So I'm going to put just a generic name for these, because that comes from the editor itself. Alternative title is going to be the batch metadata update. The domain is actually validated via a list, but I could also add a list to the list, a different value, like test for instance, and then use that value. So because I have authority now to update different things, I can also maintain the quick list from the taxonomies. What else we're going to change here? We could change the source and say that the source is Candem and give credit to Philip Menu, for instance. So I can change as much information as I want. And the information that I don't change, or when it says different values, even if I put new information that will be common to all the selected files, all the different values will be preserved unless, of course, I would override them here, which I will not do. And I'll put Candem as a producer. attribution name will be Camden. This is for the licensing and the Creative Commons licensing, in fact, in this case. And the asset management will just keep the production status, and we'll say that this has been verified by Fotoweb. So I changed about 10 fields on so many files, and you can see that the update is instantaneous. It's right away we get all these files updated. And it doesn't really change much if you have 200 files or 1000 files, because you are now using a thin client, so all the processing happens on the server. Contrarily to Photostation, in Photostation, which is a fat client, every time you do an update of text, because it's using XMP, and XMP is actually a header in the file, in the high-res file, what Photostation has to do is to have access remotely to the network storage where the high-res files are put, pull the file from high-res storage, bring it back to the Photostation, change the metadata, and then rewrite the file with the changed XMP header onto the network drive. So it creates a lot of network traffic, and it's of course a very long operation, especially if you have 200 or 300 files that you want to change. On Fotoweb Pro, this is instantaneous because this is on the server. It's a server processing. Also, what I can do is use these actions, rapid actions, to just change very rapidly some particular features for the whole selection. And I can also drag and drop the whole selections to an album, for instance. So if I want to drag all these files to my album, and I go back to my JVM album, now I get all these pictures into my album. So very, very fast way of working, and time savers, like the bookmarks that you can put on a particular selection. You can also play with the thumbnail size. You have different options available to show the metadata in the thumbnails, or mask it, or show the mask. Different views available. Select these files because they haven't been changed. So it's a selection, I'm sorry, it's a rapid selection according to the status here, the visual status. And this is also a selection according to the number of stars. I can search all archives or just this archive. And of course I can go in alerts and go into the upload. And if I click on the Fotoweb logo here, I still have access to the standard interface as well, even though I'm a pro user, but I also have access to the regular interface. So this is the end of the presentation for the 3 types of licenses: Standard, Plus, and Pro. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation and you've appreciated the new features of the Fotoweb 8 clients. Thank you very much and have a nice day.